Welcome to Matters Financial with Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you kindly as ever for stopping by. I'm always grateful. If you didn't see that MindSpeak presentation I made about 4 to 6 weeks ago, please take a look. At that point, I thought Trump had a far better chance than he's proving to have now. But let's see. Apparently, Paddy Power have already paid out on Hillary Clinton bets. So that's something to consider. I also participated in an inside story about BRICS. Take a look if you have a moment. Macro thoughts, central bankers rejoice, inflation may have finally arrived. Have a look at the inflation numbers coming out of the developed markets. China GDP remains steady as domestic drivers underpin growth. This is an interesting chart for you to look at. And it's just so steady, I find it incredible. And in fact, I'm highly skeptical of the GDP rates that they continue to report. Have a look at this from Zero Hedge via Evercore ISI, China GDP straight line versus actual economic index from Evercore. And I think that's the more accurate picture, in point of fact. Nothing in front of us but the road to the Mara, crossing through Maasai country. This tweet didn't go when I was there, and I found it again and sent it out. It's jacaranda season here in Nairobi, and I attended a function at the KICC this morning and took a photograph of the jacaranda tree in flowers. I had all the characteristics of a human being: flesh, blood, skin, hair. But my depersonalization was so intense, had gone so deep, that my normal ability to feel compassion had been eradicated. The victim of a slow, purposeful erasure. I was simply imitating reality, a rough resemblance of a human being with only a dim corner of my mind functioning. That's from Bret Easton Ellis, American Psycho. Political reflections from Zero Hedge, American Psycho, sex, lies, and politics add up to a terrifying election season. Trump's wife very bravely says, "Don't feel sorry for me," in comeback attempt. Desperate to shift the narrative after 10 brutal days, Donald Trump's wife made a personal appeal to voters to focus on issues other than the sexual misconduct allegations that had wounded her husband's campaign. He should have known these were coming and should have been prepared. "Don't feel sorry for me. I can handle everything," Melania Trump said. And then a tweet here. There is something so pathetic about this photo. A portrait of a man taking the low road to nowhere. I like this, an aging world, except of course in Africa, where we have a very young population. UK's RT clampdown could echo US information war against Russia. That's Sputnik. You will recall that I was in Durham, and the only 2 channels that worked were BBC and Sputnik, which is quite interesting. Made interesting watching. I'd watch one and then see what they were saying and then watch the other. Different worlds, different universes. And then finally, UN fears more cholera in Haiti after storms as protests are slowing relief. I had a good friend in Congo who was in Haiti at the time of the earthquake and saved himself by jumping under a desk at his building. The annual inflation rate accelerated to 1% from 0.6% in August. That's above the 0.9% forecast by economists in the Bloomberg survey, higher since 2014. It's going a lot higher. Have a look at this. The UK yield curve today, government borrowing costs on all its bills and bonds, versus just before Prime Minister May's party conference speech. Interestingly, shares in the Swiss National Bank, one of the world's few traded central banks, have been surging. Quite a story there. Currency markets: euro just below 110, 109.96, dollar index 97.72, Japanese yen when I looked last 103.44, Swissy 0.9884, The pound 123.25, Aussie 0.7684, India rupee 66.705, South Korean won 11.2214, the Rial 318.81, Egyptian pound 8.8784. Well, that's way off the black market rate. South African rand 13.88. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 3-month chart. At some point, the bears are going to seriously growl. I think what you've had is an interesting scenario where people are more worried about Brexit, the impact on UK. They've been buying the euro versus sterling, but at some point that's going to unwind and whipsaw. Have a look at this from Aurelia, copper versus the euro, practically moving in lockstep according to her. Sterling 1-month chart, a little bit of a bounce going on here from recent lows. 123.18 when I looked last. Commodity markets, gold 1262.55 area, still performing after sort of a steep fall through 1300. It's holding above 1250. Crude oil, now this has been on a roll, $51.33 last. Everyone is imbibing the Kool-Aid at the moment and shoving prices up. It's the path of least resistance, but at some point it's going to unwind because I don't see any silver bullet coming out of OPEC for now, unless Saudi Arabia are prepared to cut by, I estimate, 3 million barrels. Dr. Copper doing it again, risk on. This is Aurelia. Have a look at her chart. Cartier's Sky Blue Diamond is predicted to draw up to $25 million in Sotheby's. Looks rather fantastic. Saudi Arabia makes friends with the bond markets, pays generous yields in debut bond issue. Have a look at the premium they're paying over Abu Dhabi and Qatar. And then just for good measure, they executed a royal family member for murder, and sending another message that they are very harsh, but fair, I suppose. Emirates says may cut Africa flights because of economic challenges. Foreign airlines flying to Nigeria have started to refuel abroad because jet fuel supplies there have become more expensive and scarce as the country battles a hard currency shortage. Emirates has started a detour to Accra, Ghana to refuel its daily Abuja-bound flight, a spokesman said last month. The airline had already cut its twice-daily flights to Lagos and Abuja to just one. In certain African countries, the currencies have really gone down, so we're reflecting on a number of these to look at where it's just not worth us to travel. This has been a problem that's happened to a number of airlines, and Abuja and Lagos seem to be where they've both had a devalued currency and not being able to find jet fuel. Reuters quotes French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault as saying there is only one way to get out of the crisis, and that is that the president does not present himself and arranges elections. Pushing back the election to an uncertain date in 2018 is not the solution. There is a risk of violent demonstrations and repression. And it's another strike in Kinshasa. Look at this photograph from Jeff Arthur, who's on the ground in Kinshasa center. I wrote about Ethiopia over the weekend, saying its reputation had been shattered by political tensions. I started by saying I recall reading The Emperor by Richard Kapuscinski, and in that book, Kapuscinski recounts the tale of Lulu. This was Haile Selassie's lapdog that was allowed to piss on the shoes of dignitaries and the courtier whose job for 10 years was to wipe those shoes clean with a satin cloth. Can you imagine having that job? The book also speaks to how the cushion bearer, the emperor, was very short and therefore had to be perched on cushions so not to be beneath his subjects, became an all-powerful figure in the imperial court. Kapuscinski was subsequently trashed for his poetic license in his reportage, but I accept his mea culpa. If you don't understand a thing, I'm not writing, so the details add up. The point is the essence of the matter. We are more than a decade down the road from that time. That was my first visit to Addis Ababa. And what is now clear is that the dissent has metasized to the point that the regime has seen fit to impose a 6-month state of emergency. The government need to change tack and effect a course correction. And history shows us that this course correction is one of the most difficult things to pull off. South African all shares up 0.85% so far this year. Dollar rand around 13.91. I think it's a bit of a sell, the rand. Shelves go bare in Egypt as soaring sugar prices catch government off guard. Borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbour has really been so contentious in Egypt. Supermarkets across the country, sugar has all but vanished, prompting media talk of a crisis and pushing the state to rapidly increase imports despite an acute dollar shortage and soaring global prices of the sweetener. Egypt consumes around 3 million tons of sugar annually, but produces just over 2 million, with the gap filled by imports, usually between July and October, when local beet and sugarcane supplies have wound down. Traders said high global sugar prices, which surged 50% over the past year, combined with a rising black market rate for dollars, has made it too expensive and risky for many importers to obtain sugar in recent months. Importers have no choice but to turn to the black market to get dollars as banks ration meager supplies, paying 15 Egyptian pounds. Remember, the official rate is 8.88 or more per dollar versus an official rate of 8.8. At such rates and more, traders say they can no longer buy. The Egyptian stock market is up 17.24% this year. Nigerian all shares down 3.79% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 11.77% this year. Uganda has reduced its key rate to 13% to support the economy. The Bank of Uganda lowered its benchmark interest rate by 100 basis points to 13%, saying slowing inflation gave it room to support flagging growth. Given that core inflation is forecast to remain around the medium target of 5% over the next 12 months, there is room to support the domestic economic growth momentum, especially against the global economic slowdown. This is the governor. Africa's most valuable business is worth less than what it owns. This is Napster's. 15 years ago, a South African media company invested $34 million in an obscure Chinese internet developer. Today, that stake is worth $88 billion. This is Naspers. Now Africa's most valuable company has to figure out how to make money from its other properties. The whole company is only worth $72 billion, less than its stake in Shenzhen-based Tencent Holdings. Investors aren't impressed with Naspers' operations in pay TV, newspapers, and e-commerce in such countries such as South Africa, Russia, and India. The valuation gap is an opportunity for long-term investors who've done their homework on Naspers' e-commerce components, said Ruan Stander, money manager at Cape Town-based Alan Gray, who owns Naspers' shares. The headline accounting numbers can mislead you into thinking these businesses are failing, yet they need a period of loss-making to establish themselves in the marketplace, he said. I attended a Kenya Revenue Authority tax summit this morning, and what was interesting, and I knew about this actually, tax collections was $2.8 billion in 2002-2003, rose to $11.8 billion 2015 to 2016. Which is a growth rate in local currency of 14.8%. It was great. It was a pleasure participating in a panel with the current Commissioner General, the previous Commissioner General, and his predecessor. The predecessor wasn't there on the panel, but in the audience. The Commissioner General said, "We fully expect the KRA to be the first paperless government institution by 2018." Interestingly, Kenya collects more tax per head than any other sub-Saharan African country. Kenya poised for another first in mobile money revolution. A very interesting report out of Deloitte says Kenya is ripe for a mobile money revolution, urges local businesses to align their sales models with the emerging reality to stay ahead of the competition. Deloitte says the continued uptake of mobile payments by consumers has reached a critical point where it is posing a threat to traditional retail models based on cash payments. The study found that 11% of Kenyan consumers are already using mobile payments, more than 5 times Nigeria's 2%, nearly 3 times South Africa and Uganda's 4%, and ahead of Zimbabwe's 7%. The figure represents only transactions paid for using mobile money and excludes mobile money transfers. Deloitte's study also found that Kenya remains way ahead of its African peers on the use of mobile money transfers. The study found that 33% of Kenyans are making mobile transfers compared to Nigeria's 11%. Kenya's consumers were also found to be adopting mobile money faster than their African peers, placing the country in pole position to become the region's first digital economy. The level of adoption of these services is currently low, and the gap represents a significant monetization opportunity for operators, said Deloitte. The holy grail of retail right now is understanding shopper behavior live. As they move around, you want to impact their decision to buy while they're in the store. The study found that 71% of Kenyans look at their phones within 5 minutes of waking up, with a further 53% looking at their phones before sleeping. Smartphones become ever more embedded in our lives. We see new opportunities and challenges for the mobile sector, retailers and advertisers, says Deloitte. Very interesting report, looking to get some more information on that pretty soon. Nairobi All Share down 6.23% this year. Nairobi NSE 20 down 19.58% this year. US burger chain Hardee's to open 10 Nairobi outlets. Kalpa Kenya tweeted this: Captain Paul Gichinga led the pilots to work this morning and someone paid him a courtesy call. Michael Joseph effect has surged the Kenya Airways share price to 2016 high. It's trading limit up right now. So he's really had a positive effect, galvanized the price. BlackRock Fund Advisors, world's largest asset manager, earlier this month acquired 72.08 million Safaricom shares. Safaricom share price data is linked as one of the last pieces on which wrap-ups. As we said, Standard & Poor's upgraded Kenya's credit outlook to stable from negative. That was the day before yesterday. They said, we understand oversight of the public debt management office has been bolstered and new debt management systems have been introduced. We view these factors as supportive of the government's credit worthiness. Kalpa called off their strike. The share price has surged over 5 for the first time this year. Safaricom eased 0.5% yesterday, but very thin volume. I suspect someone like BlackRock has probably got more to buy. NIC Bank was the most actively traded bank share, retreated 2.65% to close at 27.50, down 36.41% this year. Standard Chartered rallied 3.37% to close at 184. It is the only banking share price which has delivered a positive return this year and is actually cheap at this price. KCB closed up a quarter, 25 cents. Total Kenya rallied very sharply to close 3.45% higher at 18, matching a 5-month high. Once again, thank you for stopping by. Tomorrow we're off. We've got a holiday, Mashuja Day, which is Heroes Day, so we look forward to that. And we'll pick it up again on Friday. Once again, thank you for stopping by.